faithful God, especially for those that made it through. And today, together, we remember. Thank you for your leading. Amen. You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to introduce to you Bonnie Traversy from ICEJ Canada.
Thank you. Shoah survivors, ladies and gentlemen, young people, as West Regional Director of ICEJ Canada, I would like to welcome you to this year's honoring of Yom HaShoah. It's a sacred time of reflection and remembrance. Yom HaShoah literally means Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust and heroism. The date, the 27th of Nisan, was selected by Israel's parliament, the Knesset, on April 12, 1951, anchored by a law signed by then Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion and President of Israel Yitzhak Ben-Zvi. Jewish communities and individuals worldwide commemorate this day to honor the 6 million Jewish souls who perished at the hands of the evil Nazi regime. Thank you for all coming to this program as we endeavor to remember, to recall the victims of this catastrophe, to honor the survivors, to recognize so many lost communities, to grieve the loss with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and vow to never forget. Commemorating helps us in remembrance. It educates us about the past as we strive to learn from the evils of our history, bringing awareness regarding anti-Semitism, religious intolerance, indifference, and genocide, which is sadly still happening in this world today. As Jews and Christians, spiritual people, and people of conscience, we want to make this world a better place. Let's seek to commit to stand against anti-Semitism in all of its forms. May we say, never again will there be another atrocity such as the Holocaust, and never again will we stand by in silence as Christians while our brothers perish at the hands of evil. I would like to introduce today's MC and director of this memorial, Dina Kaufman with ICEJ Canada. She will now lead us in O Canada and Hatikva.
Please stand for O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in our sons command. We glowing hearts, we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard
now sing the Hatikvah, Israel's national anthem.
This prayer was written by Rabbi David Katz, but I'd like to ask that we attend to his words very carefully and each and collectively make them our own. Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe. On this most solemn of occasions, we open our hearts, our minds, and our souls to you. As we remember the 6 million, the 11 million, the indifference, and the evil. As we honor the heroes, the martyrs, the survivors, and the victims, we ask you to soothe our souls, to amplify our memories, to strengthen our resolve, and to hear our prayers. We ask for your presence in our midst, for healing, light, and love, to soothe and ease our pain as we commemorate the horrors that were committed not very long ago. Please, O Holy One, be gentle with our souls. We ask that you help us forever to remember the stories that we hear. As tales of the atrocities are shared, as we re-encounter the unthinkable, we ask that these memories be strengthened and never fade, in the hope that those who remember the mistakes of the past will not repeat them. Please, O Holy One, amplify our ability to remember. We ask that you strengthen our will, that you help us to ensure that the world does not again see such monstrosities. We say, never again, and we dedicate ourselves to this principle, to the idea that justice does not allow persecution, that genocide shall not be repeated, and that vigilance is the responsibility of freedom at all costs. Please, O Holy One, make manifest our resolve that these horrors remain but memories. We ask that you answer our prayers. We pray that the call of evil falls on deaf ears, that those who fight for freedom and justice will always prevail, that those who need protection do not become victims. We pray that the lessons that we learn from this darkest hour allow all humankind to better itself and to truly and nobly embody the idea that we are each made in your image. We pray for the souls of the millions and millions of victims of this brutality. We pray that we will honor their lives and their memories by observing this day and by doing everything in our power and beyond to make sure that no such shadow again darkens our world. Above all, we pray for shalom, for wholeness and peace, to be in our midst now and forever. Please, O Holy One, answer our prayers and bring us a world devoid of hatred, filled instead with shalom. Ken yehi razon. May this be God's will. And may we all say together, Amen.
This is a prayer composed by the Rabbi Lord Sachs. Will you pray along with me with this prayer? Today on Yom HaShoah, we remember the victims of the greatest crime of man against man. The young, the old, the innocent, the 1.5 million children starved, shot, given lethal injections, gassed, burned, and turned to ash. Because they were deemed guilty of the crime of being different. We remember what happened when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. What happens when victims cry for help and there is no one listening? What happens when humanity fails to recognize that those who are not in our image are nonetheless in God's image? We remember and pay tribute to the survivors who bore witness to what happened, and to the victims, so that robbed of their lives, they would not be robbed also of their deaths. We remember and give thanks for the righteous of the nations who saved lives, often at risk of their own, teaching us how in the darkest night we can light a candle of hope. Today on Yom HaShoah, we call on you, Almighty God, to help us hear your voice that says in every generation, do not murder, Do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. Do not oppress the stranger. We know that whilst we do not have the ability to change the past, we can change the future. We know that whilst we cannot bring the dead back to life, we can ensure their memories live on and that their deaths were not in vain. And so, on this Yom HaShoah, we commit ourselves to the simple act, Yitzchar, remember. May the souls of the victims be bound in the bond of everlasting life. Amen.
Comments and quotations are taken from Yad Vashem, Rabbi Sachs, and the Shoah Scroll. Today we come to Yom HaShoah, Hebrew for Day of Destruction of the Jewish people. We come to mourn and we come to remember the lives of 6 million Jewish souls who were murdered between 1933 and 1945 at the hands of an evil dictator and his regime and its collaborators in Nazi-dominated Europe. The systematic murder of the Jewish people from 1941 to 1945 was part of the Nazis' destructive plan. Deportation of the Jews to the ghettos concluded in the policy of extermination the Nazis called the final solution to the Jewish question. The worst genocide in history was perpetrated against the Jewish people, resulting in the murder of 2/3 of the Jewish population of Europe. This destruction, also part of a larger event, resulting in the murder of at least 11 to 17 million people during World War II. The Holocaust, an expression, is the most extreme expression of genocide. Genocide, such as the Holocaust, including genocides of the Sinti Roma, the Armenian genocide, the genocide in Cambodia, the Rwandan genocide, and the crises and genocide in the territory of the former Yugoslavia, and others, is a deep, dark stain on our humanity. We must stand up against genocide in every part of the world. Today we mourn the lives of 6 million Jewish souls who are lost to us. What befell the people of Israel in Nazi Europe is beyond classification, and what confronted its sons and daughters denies description. Untold numbers were forced out of their homes, torn from their families, trampled in the dust, worked to death. 6 million created in the divine image were strangled, cremated, shot, buried alive. They died of starvation, of thirst and cold. Without mercy, the Nazi regime and its collaborators set out to destroy, to slaughter, to lay waste to an entire people. Like a gigantic thundering orchestra, all of these sounds silenced the thin, small voice bursting out of the hearts of the precious few, the righteous of the world's nations, who had been touched by the word of God. May God recall their deeds in their favor. We remember entire communities who perished at the hands of the Nazi regime. Jewish communities all throughout Europe destroyed by hate and evil. Some communities had been founded less than a century before, while others were ancient communities whose reputation was firmly anchored in Jewish tradition. By organizing themselves into communities, the Jews were able to maintain their uniqueness as a nation. The Jewish community enabled the Jews to safeguard their physical and cultural existence. By the end of the Shoah, for some communities, almost 2,000 years of Jewish communal life had come to an end. We mourn these communities today, now lost forever. The Valley of the Communities in Yad Vashem is a massive 2.5-acre monument, literally dug out of natural bedrock, where we can go to mourn the lost communities. Over 5,000 names of Jewish communities are engraved on the stone walls in the Valley of the Communities. Each name recalls a Jewish community which existed for some thousands of years. For the inhabitants, each community constituted an entire world. Today, in most cases, nothing remains but the name. We must never forget the Shoah, and we must always fight for life, just as the Warsaw Ghetto fighters fought for freedom and life. In every generation, the memory of the Warsaw Ghetto heroes continues to inspire us to what they believed and died for, the sanctity of life in their memory. The Nazis resolved to liquidate the Warsaw Ghetto, sending all its inhabitants to their death on Pesach, Passover 1943, 75 years ago, as if to prove to the world that there was no God to give the Jewish people their freedom on this festival of freedom. But this time, the Jews, hearing in advance of this plan, decided to fight back in one of the most courageous acts in history. They held the German army at bay for 4 weeks, sporadic fighting continuing thereafter for another 3 weeks. The bravery of those men, women, and children is simply beyond belief. They were weakened already by starvation and disease. They had only a handful of weapons, some smuggled in, others homemade. Theirs is a heroism we will never forget. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was the largest, symbolically most important Jewish uprising and the first urban uprising in German-occupied Europe. The resistance in Warsaw inspired other uprisings in ghettos. Days of remembrance ceremonies to commemorate the victims and survivors of the Holocaust are linked to the dates of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Today, it is our challenge to fight anti-Semitism in all its forms. Friends, let's be very aware. The new anti-Semitism is different from the old, merely in focusing not on Jews as individuals, but on Jews as a nation in their own land, Israel, is as vicious as the old, as potentially murderous as the old, and the fact that it is being given protected space on our university campuses and in some of our media shows that what we learned from history is that people who do not study history fail to learn from history and reproduce all its failings and its hates. Whenever you hear human rights invoked to deny Israel's right to exist, you are hearing the new anti-Semitism. It was not Jews alone who suffered under Hitler. It wasn't Jews alone who suffered under Stalin. It isn't Jews alone who suffer under the radical Islamists and others who deny Israel's right to exist. On this March 23, 2018, Muriel Knoll, an 85-year-old French Jewish woman and Holocaust survivor, was brutally murdered, her body burned in her Paris apartment. This happened just a week before the feast of this last Passover. The murder has been officially described by the French authorities as an anti-Semitic hate crime. In 1942, just 6 years before Israel gained its independence, Knoll miraculously escaped the roundup and deportation of 13,000 French Jews, among them 4,000 other Jewish children from Vichy, France, to the Auschwitz concentration camp in what is now Poland. Only 100 of those survived. After World War II, Knoll resumed her life in France, and she became a wife, mother, and grandmother. But tragically, she is now not with us. These unthinkable crimes are on the rise in Europe. This was the 11th anti-Semitic murder in France in the past 12 years, among dozens of other anti-Semitic incidents occurring across Europe. Frequent assaults on Jews on average twice per week created a sense of insecurity, now heightened by the recent murder. Anti-Semitism is the world's most reliable early warning sign of a major threat to freedom, humanity, and the dignity of differences. This matters to all of us, which is why we must fight it together. Now knowing that the eyewitnesses of the Holocaust are becoming fewer each year, many survivors have taken on the task of education, handing their stories on to future generations. That has taken enormous courage. What has touched so many deeply is how survivors remember without hate or a desire for revenge. Their message is simple: not to hate. Know that prejudice leads to hate and evil. Fight intolerance. Cherish every day like it is your last. Love life to the fullest and be willing to fight for it. Love the stranger among us, for how we treat them is a test of our humanity. Above all, let's remember, for without memory, a civilization travels without vision. I want to thank the survivors, for you are our role models. You bear witness with incredible bravery, sharing your memories with Jews and non-Jews alike. I would like now to call the first and second generations Shoah survivors to light memorial candles. Lillian Borax-Nemitz, Amelia Bo Fishman, Rita Axelrod, Marta Archibald Fisher, Dory Chalmé, Alex Buckman, Bill Gruenthal, I would like now to call up Yoel to say the Kaddish, Yoel Levin to say the Kaddish prayer after the lighting.
We can stand up, please. התגדל והתקדש שמי רבם ועלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשם בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה מעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. In English. Hallowed and enhanced may he be throughout the world of his own creation. May he cause his sovereignty soon to be accepted during our life and in the life of all of Israel, and let us say amen. May he be praised throughout all time. May he be glorified and celebrated, lauded and worshipped, acclaimed and honored, exalted may the Holy One be. Praised beyond all song and psalm, beyond all tributes which mortals can utter, and let us all say amen. May he who makes the peace in heaven make peace for all of us and for all of Israel, and let us say amen.
You may now be seated. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to our Vancouver Holocaust education speaker, wife, mother, grandmother, Shoah child survivor, Amelia Bo-Fishman.
This is very strange for me, speaking to a group of adults. I'm used to talk to children, and I probably will tell my experiences, how I usually do it in the school. I'm a little nervous, so you have to bear with me. I was listening to the pastor, and he was saying, we must not forget the heroes. And you will see after I read part of my experiences and show my pictures that my experiences are really interwoven with the people who rescued me and made sure that I have a family, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So I'm going to read part of it from before the war and during the war. Then I'm going to show some pictures. And then I'm going to go to the second part, which is after the war. And you will understand why when I'm doing that. So you will have to bear with me that I'm reading my story, otherwise I will forget what I'm talking about. So my story as a Jewish child. I was born in a town called Leeuwarden in the Netherlands. I had a father, mother, brother, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. My father's parents lived in Amsterdam. My father was an only child, but he had cousins in Amsterdam. He liked spending time with them when I was a young boy. My mother lived in Arnhem. There were 6 siblings in her family, a big, happy family. The parents of my mother immigrated to Israel in the 1930s with 3 of the children. My mother and a sister and a brother stayed in the Netherlands. My mother was a nurse in a Jewish hospital in Amsterdam. And then one day, a patient who had a motorbike accident arrived in the hospital where he met my mom, fell immediately in love, so they were married in 1935. You can imagine they were my parents. My brother Dick was born in 1937, and then I arrived in 1939. We had a good life, neighbors, friends, and family. I didn't know there was going to be a war. I was a baby. May 1940s, the Germans invaded the Netherlands. I heard later it was becoming more and more difficult to be Jewish. Hitler and his Nazis made many discriminating rules against the Jews. Everyone, Jews and non-Jews, filled out a form explaining how many Jews or non-Jewish parents and grandparents each had. This gave the Nazis valuable information which made the separation of Jews and non-Jews easy. Schools had to put up a sign in Aryan declaration. I hope you don't mind, I'm reading this because it is sort of an introduction to my experiences. Jews were forced to wear a yellow star made out of cloth and sewn on their clothes. Then children were not allowed to go to school. My father helped out by teaching at somebody's home the Jewish high school children. No other activities like swimming, going to the movies were allowed. Radios were not allowed. Many adults lost their jobs. But my father, he was still working. Jews were rounded up, beaten, and sent to camps. First to a camp in the Netherlands, Westerbork, and I will show you later pictures of it, and then sent to a concentration camp. One such camp was in Poland called Auschwitz. That's what happened to my grandparents, uncles, and Jewish friends of my family. In August 1942, my father received a call-up notice. This is to identify himself as a Jew. My father was working as a scientist in a research laboratorium at the cooperative farmers' milk factory called the Condensfabrik in Friesland. And now you will see why I talk about the heroes. Jan Spiekout, my father's research assistant and a member of the resistance. Jan found immediately an address for my father to go into hiding. He and others wanted to help the Jews. So many Jews, I have to say some of the Jews, my parents know, did not go in hiding. They decided to commit suicide as a family rather than being part of all those horrid experiences. But Jan, my foster brother, became my foster brother. He arranged a hiding address for my mother, my brother, and myself. We could not stay together. That was too dangerous. I was only 3 years old, and my brother, Dick, 5 years old. This was so difficult to be separated from our parents. My mother gave me a very special doll to keep me company. And lately I found a letter my mother wrote a while before I went in hiding, and that was for people who, wherever I would be going, to give them some guidelines how to deal with me as a child, my diet and my sleeping habits. And also she told in that letter that I was very close to my older brother, who was 5 years old. And if my parents wouldn't survive the war, they wanted us to go to Israel and stay with one or the other of my mother's brothers or sisters. Luckily, that didn't happen, of course. But, okay. Hiding. Sorry. I lost track. It was so difficult for my father and my mother to send us away, not knowing that they ever would see us again. And then Jan Spiekout took me on the back of his bike to his mom, dad, and 6 children. He was the oldest child, and that's what I mean with heroes, because we know how dangerous it was, of course. This was a Christian religious family. And I already said how dangerous it was to hide Jewish children, adults, or anybody, because they would end up with the same fate as the Jews and go to the concentration camp. The children were told that I was not Jewish, but I told them right away, I'm Jewish and I have to wear a yellow star. So it was very dangerous to let me play outside. I stayed 3 years indoors, never going outside. I was told later that I tried to run away one time and I got into big trouble. I shared a bed with 2 of the Spiekout daughters. They were 12 and 13-year-old. Behind this bed was a special hiding place, a small storing space. This is where I was told to hide in case Nazis came to look for Jews in the house. If they did, I can't remember if I ever went in there, but I might have. And sometimes, when needed, I was sent to another place away from my foster family. One time, somebody knocked on the door, and apparently I went in the hallway, and he saw me, and he said, he was a man who worked for my father, and he said, oh, that is one, my maiden name is Van Krefeld. That's the Van Krefeld daughter. So my foster family became very scared and sent me to the country to another family for a while. But then I came back, and I was, during the war, a little baby was born in my foster family, and I was so happy to have a little brother. I forgot my own family, as you can imagine. Over time, some Dutch escaped soldiers came to the Spiekout family. They had a very, very small house, actually, and there was a dining room, and everything happened in the dining room. And I remember my foster father shaving, and I was not allowed to touch the table because he would cut himself. But anyhow, underneath the table was a carpet, and underneath the carpet was a trap door, and some of the soldiers who escaped, one of them was one of the sons of the Speak Out. Soldiers who escaped went down in that spot and stayed in a crawl space. So that's where they were hiding. And now I would like to show some pictures and maybe be more personal. Could you show some pictures? Okay, so these are my grandmother and my grandfather for my father's side, and I'm the baby, and that's my brother Dick or David. And these grandparents went to Westerbork, which you will see later, and consequently to Auschwitz, and didn't survive the war. So next picture. That's myself with my brother, and you can see I was a happy little girl, and I certainly didn't know that there was a war or that I had to go in hiding. And actually, that transit camp where all the Jewish people from the Netherlands went to in Westerbork, they have a memorial site, and I went there one time with my older brother, and I looked on the stones, and I could see that in German, French, I believe, and Dutch was written Jood. Jood is the Dutch word, and the people had to wear that particular yellow star attached to their clothes. Okay. Oh, yeah, I don't know how well you can see this. You can see that I highlighted Westerbork in the north part of the Netherlands. So from there, the people had to take the train to Auschwitz, and as you can see, it is a long, long, long way. And many people didn't survive. And what I believe, and I'm quite sure, that once when my grandparents went to that concentration camp, they were sent right away. Am I doing okay? Yeah, to the gas chamber. So sometimes I think, I don't know what is better, if they died right away or that they had to see all the horrors. Anyhow, that's Auschwitz and Westerbork. Next one, please. Well, this picture we all know, right? I use these pictures for the children in the school. That's why I'm showing them to you as well. That's my order. And this is part of the monument in Westerbork. And it shows the train tracks, and it is symbolic to show that this was the end. This was the end of being together as a family, because in Westerbork, the families could stay together, but every week people were called up and go in the train, go to Auschwitz. So this is sort of symbolic. So these are for my grandparents. And as I told you, they went to Auschwitz. And much later, I went with my brother to Westerbork to just look in all the books. It's amazing how the Germans kept their records. Everything was written down. And we looked for various peoples we knew and who hadn't survived the Holocaust. And this is a picture of my grandfather, and I think you saw the one of my grandma already. Well, that's one of my, oh yeah. Well, this is Jan Speak Out, and he was already much older here. After the war, he became quite prominent in the Frisian, God, I'm thinking in Dutch, government, but he always stayed the same. He rode his bicycle, and that's, I just wanted to show that to the children in particular, because I sat on the back of the bicycle and he brought me home on the back of the bicycle to his parents' home. And that is actually the home of the Speak Outs where I was living. And many years after, with my younger brother, I wanted to have another look at the house, and most of the family members had died already. But anyhow, we looked and I had a picture and, brought back memories, of course. Let me see. Oh, sorry. I want to go to the second part now, so I have to read a bit again. Oh. Okay. So in May 1945, the end of the war, the Canadian soldiers, they were liberating the Netherlands. I'm always telling the children in the school how proud they can be of the Canadian soldiers, because they were, everybody thought they were just wonderful. Even now, when on May the 4th, when it is the Dutch Remembrance Day, if there's still any Canadian soldiers alive, they always will be there, and people are very happy to greet them, of course. Germany surrendered. You can imagine how happy the people were. Streets were decorated. The Canadian soldiers came rolling in on their tanks, waving, handing out and chocolates. And of course, we were smiling, dancing, and waving Dutch flags. I, with my two big sisters, Ali and Annie, were allowed to go downtown. Which is very different because I hadn't been outside at all. So here we went downtown. And in the Netherlands, you got moats around every city. So you always have to go over a bridge to get into the center of the city. So we needed to walk over a bridge to enter downtown. A very traumatic experience happened for me. Panic broke loose. The Germans are coming, the Germans are coming. The people were shouting. And people were running and pushing. And I felt the bridge moving and was so scared. It was my first time outside. So then in June 1945, my father and my mother, my brother Dick, and in the meantime, I had a baby brother from my biological parents as well. My brother Jan, called after my foster brother Jan, my baby brother Jan was called after my foster brother Jan. He was born on November the 11th, 1944. That's when the war was supposed to be finished, but it was another very cold winter. Many people didn't have much to eat. But again, I can't remember too much because it was just, that's the way it was. Well, we were the lucky ones. My grandparents and other families I never saw. They were murdered in the concentration camp. My parents found a house, not the same house as before the war. Of course, they wanted me and my brother Dick to come home, but as you can imagine, I did not want to go home. My own parents were strangers to me. I now loved my foster family, the heroes, of course. I remember hanging onto the fence and screaming, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. I do remember that. And also I ran away and I was hoping my parents, my biological parents wouldn't find me, but of course they did. And I have to say my parents were patient with me. After a few weeks, my own mother, convinced me. I always see my own mother and my other mother because I always treat everything as my two families. After a few weeks, my own mother convinced me that there was also a baby in the house, my brother Jan, and I decided I would give it a try to go home. It was very difficult to adjust to the new life. To my father, I only pointed and I called him only he. He was very, very different from my father, speak out, my other father, who was kind of a burly man, and I was this little girl. And my father was quite serious. And when I look back now, of course, he had his own demons about what happened during the war and always running away because he always was on a run. And apparently I went on a hunger strike. And it was very difficult for my parents. So not only that my grandparents were murdered, my mother's most beloved sister, she was murdered, and many other members of the family. And then my brother Dick didn't want to go home either. he didn't have such a good experience in hiding as I did. The people didn't even let him sleep in the house with them because he wetted the bed apparently. And he was sent after that to a farm, and he was much happier. So then we stayed in a house of a convicted Nazi Dutch collaborator who themselves were sent to the Auschwitz. Swastikas on everything, cups, plates, blankets, etc. And I had to learn walking over the bridge after my traumatic experience. My mother and I practiced every day over a bridge to go downtown. Step by step, I finally succeeded. Going to school was disastrous too. I was not used to that many children. After the war, it was not uncommon to have 60 children in one classroom, and they were all sort of close together. And it was very difficult for me to have the children around me. So bit by bit, we adjust. I spent many times in my foster family, as you can imagine, my other family. I still call them father and mother. Father and mother speak out. We moved into a new neighborhood. I liked school and played with my friends. We got a sailboat, and I went many camping trips. Went to college to become a kindergarten teacher. Worked some years in England, and then I went to an old pond program in Israel, and I stayed in a kibbutz, Bet Hashita in Israel. And I met in the kibbutz a Canadian man, Mordechai Fishman, who is the father of my 3 sons who are here today with their family. After some time, we decided to get married and move to Canada. So here I am. 3 wonderful sons, 8 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. My foster family, my other family, I never forget, of course. Whenever I go to the Netherlands, I visit with them. My foster father always called me his little girl. My foster mother liked to tell me stories about the war. Once I asked him, "Why did you take me into your house?" Her answer was, "It was our Christian duty." They read the Bible, and she told me many stories, of course. And but then I don't believe it. After a while, it was not her Christian duty. I think they really loved me. I was a very, very lucky girl, of course. And one year we went as a family to the Netherlands, and we spent many times there. But as a family, I remember we actually had 3 Jans there because I have a son. The oldest son of my 3 sons is called Jan, after my brother Jan and my foster brother Jan. So the name Jan is a very important name to our family, and always will be, of course. After all these years, only one foster brother, baby Simon, is still alive. Some years ago, I went with my 3 sons to the Netherlands. We stayed with my brother Jan and his family. We were part to a post-mortem ceremony to honor my mother, father, and Jan Speak Out. They were inscribed in the honor wall of the righteous. You will see pretty soon the pictures at Yad Vashem, Jerusalem. And we were there with children and grandchildren of the family who saved me. And that was a very emotional day, of course. And I like to show some more pictures now. Oh, that's when, again, I showed to the school children because I want to show them how everybody went running out and waved their flags, and was happy to see the Canadian soldiers come in and such. And here the same thing. And this is one picture, and that was in the house my mother hated so much with all the swastikas. And you can see my baby brother Jan. Dick is holding him. I'm standing behind her, and one of my cousins, whose father was in a concentration camp but survived it, and they came and visited with us. So that was in 1945. Now here you go. The 3 sons are here right now. I have here Jan. Let's see, who's on the side there? It's Ben, Paul, myself, and Jan. So I don't know if they want to stand up or not, but so, you can imagine how lucky I am with my family and their children and the grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And if it wouldn't have been for Jan Speak Out, the hero, and his parents, and all the people who looked after my father and mother and give them full identification and got them food and moved them around. It was a big, huge organization and a lot of work to do that. So I always feel that I have to thank them a lot for saving my life and my continuing my life and my family and such. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amelia. That was so special. Thank you for sharing with us. We really appreciate that. I would like to now invite Lillian Borax-Nemitz, poet, author, and child survivor, to come light a memorial candle. This candle is lit in honor and memory of 1.5 million children who perished during the Shoah. No words can describe the enormity and loss of these dear souls. We all endeavor to remember them. Their memory is a blessing. These poems are written by two children who died in Terezin concentration camp. I've lived in the ghetto here more than a year in Terezin, in the black town now. And when I remember my old home so dear, I can love it more than I did somehow. Ah, home, home, why did they tear me away? Here the weak die, easy as a feather, and when they die forever. I'd like to go back home again. It makes me think of sweet spring flowers. Before, when I used to live at home, it never seemed so dear and fair. I remember now those golden days, but maybe I'll be going there again soon. People walk along the street, you see at once on each you meet that there's a ghetto here, a place of evil and of fear. There's little to eat and much to want, where bit by bit it's horror to live. But no one must give up. The world turns and times change. Yet we all hope the time will come when we will go home again. Now I know how dear it is, and often I remember it. September 3rd, 1943, Anonymous. This poem is preserved in manuscript, written in pencil on a sheet of lined paper torn from a notebook, the date September 03, 1943. Bird song. He doesn't know the world at all, who stays in his nest and doesn't go out. He doesn't know what birds know best. Not what I want to sing about, that the world is full of loveliness. When dewdrops sparkle in the grass and earth's aflood with morning light, a blackbird sings upon a bush to greet the dawning after night. Then I know how fine it is to live. Hey, try to open your heart to beauty. Go to the woods someday and weave a wreath of memory there. Then, if the tears obscure your way, you'll know how wonderful it is to be alive. 1941, Anonymous. This poem was written in Terezin concentration camp. I now invite Lillian to read from her new collection, Footprints, A Life in Two Worlds.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Dina. Can you hear me? Yes, this is, hopefully it'll be published soon. And of course, Footprints, Life in Two Worlds means that I think I've always lived in this world and in the world that I survived. This poem, to follow Dina, this was written when I went to a conference, a child survivor of the Holocaust conference in Prague. And my colleague Alex Bachman was there as well, and I'm not sure if Rita was there. I don't think Amalia, you were there yet at that time. And we went to Theresienstadt, concentration camp. And this is about the children. Children of a ghetto reappear in my dreams. Children trapped inside the walls of a Slavic town, beneath a volcano that once erupted in white ash. Silent streets among trees and the knowing houses with white lace curtains and hidden eyes that question, why do Jews keep returning? What do they want with this earth that buried so many, of these barracks that house them so poorly? Why still dream of children who once mapped their pain onto the drawings of prisons? Prisons that kept them away from their homes and their parents' parents who were murdered. Children who wrote poetry in memoriam of butterflies, whose wings faltered in air thick with human shame. Yes, good folks of the white lace curtains, we will keep on returning to the memory of children. Children sent to Auschwitz for refusing the showers at Theresian. The terrified children who knew about the Zyklon B. This poem was written in dedication to the Holocaust monument at the Sharat Zedek Cemetery in Vancouver, BC, when it was first commemorated. And this is how a survivor feels. In this, because I have to, I don't know if you know the memorial, it's a huge memorial, and it stands in the cemetery the Shaare Zedek Cemetery in New Westminster. In this cemetery, far away from where they died, you stand, dwarfed by this giant monument, your feet sinking lower and lower into the earth, your soul graining deeper and deeper into the black granite. You stand an alien to this earth, a born-again human, 60-odd years away from the factories of death, of mercy pleading voices scattered to deaf winds. You stand in the cemetery on the anniversary of the Holocaust, staring with hollow eyes at simulated graves of strangers finally named, who once went to sleep in a common ditch, souls torn from peace, like bones from flesh. A child's name upon your lips, a child's fist pressing upon your breath, to break the granite silence, to speak, to shout, to scream the truth, to silence forever the mad dogs who deny the happenings of the Shoah. You remember, as you stand here, waiting your turn to honor the dead, how you stood with them then, in line for death, only you didn't die, running away on all fours through the contaminated sewers like a rat. You say Kaddish, and for a single moment, become one with the living and the dead. Then you, the survivor, slip away into an alien world where your soul must learn to sustain alone the 6 million. Sorry, I'm emotional. And finally, a very short poem. This is written in memoriam of our colleague, child survivor, Marion Kassirer, who was saved by the gypsies. She huddles in the dark, a wisp of a child, frightened and alone, trying to carry on. Through a long tunnel, pursued by the Furies, clawing at her Jewish head, she runs towards some miracle. A gypsy opens her shawl and hides the little girl in its painted fold. The girl lingers invisible among the flowers of darkness, till victory lights a candle and the child Marion walks out into the light. Thank you.
I'm going to now read some background and then the introduction to Dina's song, Freeling. On September 21, 1939, Reinhard Heydrich, head of the Reich Security Main Office in the SS, sent the Schnellbrief, a directive that laid out the procedures and treatment toward the Jews in the areas of occupied Poland. It declared that Jews living in towns and villages would be transferred to join larger populations of Jews in the larger cities, and that Jewish councils known as Judenrat should be established, whose purpose was to carry out the orders of the German authorities. The Schnellbrief also set the Aryanization of Jewish factories as a goal, taking into consideration the needs of the German military and the economic importance of the factories. The Jews were generally housed in the poorest neighborhoods, and these areas were eventually turned into sealed ghettos, in which the majority of Polish Jewry was incarcerated. A large hermetically sealed ghetto was established in Lodz in the spring of 1940, and in the autumn of 1940, the largest of the ghettos was established in Warsaw, where nearly 500,000 Jews were interned. After the initial mass killings in the Soviet areas occupied by the Germans beginning in June 1941, ghettos were established in these regions as well. This was even though the Germans only intended to leave the Jews in these ghettos for a short time before murdering them. The largest of these ghettos was established in Minsk, Belarus, which held approximately 100,000 Jews. The Germans occupied Hungary in March 1944. In May, they began deporting Hungarian Jewry to Auschwitz, and in November decreed the establishment of a ghetto in Budapest, in which approximately 70,000 Jews from the city were imprisoned. In all, the Germans established more than 1,000 ghettos in Eastern Europe and a few in Central and Southern Europe. The German authorities attained several goals by establishing the ghettos. They gathered large number of Jews together under conditions of severe congestion and close supervision, deprived them of their property, exploited their labor, isolated them from the rest of the world, and made them vulnerable and unprepared at crucial moments, and incited the local population against the Jews, whom they resented anyway. I'm now going to read the introduction to the song Frühling, which Dina is going to sing. This moving song memorializes Barbara Kaufman-Kazuginski, who perished in the Vilna ghetto in April 1943. It was written by her husband, Shmerke Kazuginski, a poet and lyricist, after the death of his wife. Frühling was first performed in the Vilna Theater's production Das Jogenisch in Fass, The Haste in the Barrel. It was later sung in concentration camps and after the war. The song won widespread popularity when it was incorporated into Joshua Sobel's popular play Ghetto, which dealt with the topic of theater and music in the Vilna ghetto. Shmerke Kazuginski joined the partisan forces following the liquidation of the ghetto in September 1943. After the war, he compiled several hundred poems and song lyrics. He survived the war, only to meet his death in a plane crash in 1954. The music is by Avraham Brudno, who, following the liquidation of the ghetto, was deported to a concentration camp in Estonia, where he died.
Im Ghetto von Gesso zu Gesso und kenn ich keinen Ort. Die Tod ist mein Lieber, betracht meine Rieber, Menschen nur sagen. nacht kosche Brot. Ich lacht auf mein Hebitz, die Himmel der Bläue. Wasche hab ich jetzt die Blut. Ich steh wie ein Bettler, meine Fitten toll. Bettler, abüßen es so. Friedlich, nimmst du mein Treue und bring mein Liebsten, mein Treue zurück. Friedlich, auf deine Finger bleiben und nimm mein Herz und gib es auf mein Glied. Friedlich, auf deine Finger bleiben und nimm mein Herz und gib es auf mein Glied. Sie ist high orte Frühling, früh angekommen. Sie blinkt auf Schiffbändschaft nach dir. Ich seh die Witze, verloren mit Blumen, a prediger gehst du zu mir. Die Sonne hat vergossen, dem Garten mit Strahlen, sie sprost hat die Erde sich in Grün. Mein Treuer, mein Liebster, wie bist du verfallen? Du gehst dieser Reus und mein Sinn. Friedlich, denk zu mein Treuer und bring mein Liebster, mein Treuer zurück. Friedlich, auf deine Finger bleiben und nimm mein Herz mit und gib es auf mein Glied. Friedlich, auf deine Finger bleiben und nimm mein Herz mit und gib es auf mein
The Holocaust was a critically important event in human history. It produced a credibility crisis of major proportions in regards to our fundamental assumptions about human nature, society, the modern world, and our responsibility as individuals to take a stand against unjust suffering of innocent people everywhere. These are universal issues which touch on the very foundations of civilizations. And even now, over 70 years since the end of World War II, we've not yet come to the terms with all of the implications of the Holocaust. This has become a most compelling challenge for concerned individuals all over the world. Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism are on the rise worldwide. Anti-Zionism, which is simply a new form of anti-Semitism, has become pervasive and considered socially acceptable. These are serious challenges for us today, which we must not ignore. Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum and Educational Center in Jerusalem, is a unique place for committed individuals to confront these challenges in an open, honest, and professional environment. Yad Vashem's International School for Holocaust Studies offers pastors and ministry leaders from around the world a life-changing educational experience. In 2013, Dina Kaufman participated in this program at Yad Vashem, which gave her the desire to continue educating herself about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. She volunteers with ICEJ Canada, partnering with Yad Vashem in Holocaust education and in teaching about anti-Semitism today. She considers it a great privilege to do so.
Last spring, my husband Neil and I attended Yad Vashem's Holocaust study program as well, and several others of our friends have. It's a wonderful program, very rewarding. We participated in the moving Yom HaShoah ceremony right at Yad Vashem with many dignitaries. And in our week of studies, we learned much from the various knowledgeable speakers, who included rabbis, professors, journalists, Yad Vashem staff. And most of all, we were impressed with the stories from survivors themselves. For example, we were privileged to meet the youngest living survivor saved by Oskar Schindler, to hear her story and accompany her on a visit to his grave. When meeting precious Holocaust survivors and hearing their testimonies, we realize how much they've gone through, much more than words can ever express. Yet what they have accomplished since the Shoah, the families they have raised, the love they share, their strong spirit and will to live on, even after facing horrendous evil and destruction, that is a miracle in itself. And some of them have gone on to formally teach others about lessons of the Holocaust. They are the eyewitnesses to the Shoah, which is the darkest time of modern history, and we thank them. What they have achieved in their lives in fields of education and the contributions made to our society give us renewed hope that out of death, evil, hate, and sorrow can come blossoms of life and love that last forever. They inspire us to continue striving for a world without hate or genocide. The Christian Friends of Yad Vashem Desk was founded in October 2006 in partnership with the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem in order to educate Christians about these important lessons of the Holocaust. And so we will now watch a short video clip about Yad Vashem. Thank you.
The depths of such wickedness and evil, but we can ensure for successive generations that this never happens again.
In spite of the silence of millions and millions of people worldwide during the Holocaust and the resultant Shoah, or destruction, of 1/3 of all Jews in the Nazi death camps, killing sites, and ghettos, there were a few courageous souls who risked their lives to rescue, protect, and save Jewish people during one of the darkest hours of human history.
I helped save 160 Jewish people by hiding them with righteous Gentiles, with righteous non-Jews.
And it was this challenge that was asking them to act on behalf of their Jewish neighbors, to stand in the gap between death and the Jews. And some of them felt the call in their heart and they responded, and others didn't.
And it was very, very dangerous, not only for me, for the person who was hiding, and for the person who was a Jew who was hiding there. To keep us alive, somebody had to die or somebody had to suffer.
Thousands of trees have been planted at the Yad Vashem campus in honor of the righteous among the nations. One of those trees is for Corrie ten Boom. The ten Boom family was an ordinary Christian family living in Haarlem in Holland. They managed to save many Jews by giving them a hiding place in their own home while risking their lives.
And when Caspar ten Boom was left away, he said to the Nazi officer, "There comes a time in a man's life when he has to decide whether he will obey God's law or man's."
The story is so very, very important for everyone living in this world.
We must remember that the smoke from the crematoriums of the death camps in Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor will evaporate without a trace if we allow ourselves to forget. And if, God forbid, the smoke of those chimneys are forgotten, there will be no meaning left in our existence as a civilized society. And that is my duty and the duty of many others who are speaking.
The Christian Friends of Yad Vashem was officially established in October 2006 in cooperation with the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, to raise awareness about the Holocaust and its universal lessons today for Christian communities around the world. An annual Christian leadership seminar has been launched at Yad Vashem's International School for Holocaust Studies, ensuring that pastors and Christian leaders will be prepared to share this vital information.
We have to actually address the painful experiences of the past and why the church was absent or took such a silent stance towards the oppression of the Jewish people during that period.
Help Yad Vashem preserve the memory of the past and educate for the future. This is now your time to stand up and be counted to say, never again.
We invite you to join in our activities, whatever your denomination or church.
It is so very important that you get involved and that you feel what we all feel.
And I would therefore thank you all for being a part of this project and invite you once again to stand with us and become friends of the Christian Desk at Yad Vashem.
Join us in our work as an expression of supporting this institution, the State of Israel.
With that in mind, it is very important for Christian communities to join the circle of friends of Yad Vashem.
This is a prayer for the state of Israel. The state of Israel would not exist without survivors. And if I may take a personal note here, 19 years ago, I received into my home a descendant of Rabbi Avraham Adler and Johanna Fisher, a descendant who is just one of 5% of their family that survived. 4 weeks ago, we took into our home Marta's mother and her husband. And I'd like to dedicate this to them. A prayer for the state of Israel. Let's stand. Our Father in heaven, rock and redeemer of the people Yisrael, bless the people of Yisrael. Bless the state of Yisrael with the beginning of the blossoming of our redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. And visit all our brethren of the house of Yisrael in all the lands where they are scattered, and bring them rapidly to Zion, your city, and to Yerushalayim, where your name lives, as it says in the Torah of Moshe, your servant. Even if your dwelling is at the end of the sky, God will congregate you from there and bring you from there, and will bring you toward the land that your forefathers inherited, and you will inherit it. Dedicate our hearts to love and to worship your name, and to keep all that is in your Torah. And send us the son of David, HaMashiach, of your justice, to redeem those who wait for your salvation. Appear with the glory and the pride of your strength in front of all the inhabitants of the universe. And all those who have breath will say, the God of Yisrael is the King, and he reigns over all. Amen.
Say shalom bimroma, Uya say shalom aleinu, Ve'yakol Yisrael, Imru, Amen. Oh, say shalom bimroma, Uya say shalom aleinu, Ve'yakol Yisrael, Imru, Amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael.
If I can have my dear husband bring out those beautiful things that we have, I would appreciate it. And Bonnie and Betty Lou. If I could have all the candle lighters, my dear first and second generation survivors and speakers, stand up, please. We want to thank you again so much, very much. We appreciate you and everything you do, and just want to have a little appreciation of. And I would love to thank Amelia. Amelia, this is for you.
I just want to tell you, I'm not doing this for the flowers or anything. I'm happy to be able to participate. But they are beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Amelia. We appreciate you. My husband will fix them for you and leave them in the back by the table. You can sit down. Thank you.
I'm sorry to ask you all to stand again, but we'd just like to close in prayer. Heavenly Father, Melech HaOlam, we thank you. We thank you for the survivors of the Shoah, their strength and courage. It has given us hope for the future. May you give them your blessing as even though they see this world grow darker. I pray that you protect them with your mighty arm. And we thank you for giving us all life and health. Give us all a clear resolve to fight the evil of anti-Semitism in our day. May we find hope in your scriptures, in Torah, and give us your peace as we stand as brothers and sisters, Jew and Gentile. May we together bring light to a dark world. Amen and amen.
Seated. Well, we appreciate all who came to this honoring Yom HaShoah Remembrance Day. This is an important time to remember the Holocaust and those who perished, and to always acknowledge our dearest Holocaust survivors. We thank those in the Jewish community who came out for this event, and the Vancouver Holocaust Education Center for providing our wonderful speaker, Amelia Bo Fishman. Thank you. We thank Yoel Levin for participating in today's event and saying the Kaddish prayer. We would like to thank our drivers, Glenn Houghton, Marilyn and Ernie Cully, for picking up our Holocaust survivors. Thank you. Thank you to the various Christian ministries who have helped in co-sponsoring financially and in participating in the program and providing some of the delicacies that are to follow in the fellowship hall. Thank you to Pastors Julio, Lena, and Adam Gabelli, and the congregation of Westwood Community Church for welcoming us into your church on such a wonderful occasion. I would like to also say a very special thank you to Dina Kaufman, who lovingly has provided leadership again this year for a very special time for the Christian community to honor, love, and respect the Holocaust survivors in our community. We have now concluded today's Yom HaShoah. I request that all who participated in today's program to please come to the platform so that we may take a picture with you. And then for the rest of you, everyone, we'll go downstairs into the fellowship hall. There's some treats and snacks, and we can enjoy our fellowship time. Thank you for all who came out today. Bless you. Thank you.